This video is brought to you by Squarespace, an all-in-one platform for building a brand and growing your business online. On February 12th, 2026, a hot new face entered countless new Pinterest boards. The face of Carolyn Bessette Kennedy, or more specifically, Sarah Pigeon as Carolyn Bessette Kennedy in Ryan Murphy's latest FX creation, Love Story, John F. Kennedy Jr. and Carolyn Bessette. Set in 1990s New York, the show follows the tumultuous and aesthetically pleasing romance between JFK Jr. and fashion publicist turned it girl Carolyn Bessette. The couple was together for a whirlwind 5 years before tragically dying in a plane crash in 1999 in real life. Of course, I need to give flowers where flowers are due. Carolyn has long been a cult street style icon. She's been revered for her timeless, minimalist street style, specifically her love for black and brown hues, denim and crisp white textures, sleek sunglasses, and a tortoiseshell headband, supplied by none other than historic New York pharmacy C.O. Bigelow. But Love Story, which racked up 25 million hours of viewing for its first 5 episodes on Hulu and Disney+, has introduced her to mainstream Zoomer audiences. Alec Ginsberg, co-owner of C.O. Bigelow, has even said that the store has been abnormally packed like sardines since the show aired. But to me, what stands out in the most popular Bessette-style inspo pics, what sets her apart from the countless replicators, is her Rapunzel-like locks of bright blonde hair. Fans imitating Bessette's style on TikTok often call out her hair color in the video, with brunettes captioning their posts something along the lines of, "Who said brunettes can't pull off the Carolyn Bessette vibe?" Well, if you're looking for a minimalistic 90s brunette icon, Kelly Klein is your girl. But I would say that when it comes to CBK in particular, blondness is at the core of her mass appeal, even if she wasn't actually naturally blonde. In fact, despite blonde hair's grip on the Western world, it doesn't occur as naturally as you might think. These are natural, but I can't say the same about everyone else. In 2016, journalist Christina Cauterucci reported that just 2% of the world's population and 5% of white people in the US have blonde hair. But as Joanna Pitman points out, you certainly wouldn't get that impression walking down any street in a major Western city, as seemingly every other female head is, quote, dyed a shade of blonde, be it honey, platinum, ash, or any other color from our rich lexicon of blonde shades. Blonde rates are inflated in certain industries as well. Cauterucci reports that 35% of female U.S. senators and 48% of female CEOs at S&P 500 companies are blonde. Emily Peck also shares that male CEOs are more likely to be blonde, and 43% of the highest paid male CEOs have a blonde spouse. Considering that blondness has long been associated with whiteness and racial superiority, the disproportionate percentage of blonde leaders feels off-putting to say the least. However, back in 2001, Professor Diana Kyle told The Guardian that while being blonde can boost a woman's social life, it can also potentially damage her career prospects. The outlet reported that blonde women are rejected for jobs more often than equally qualified brunettes, and that darker-haired applicants are usually awarded higher salaries for similar jobs. We often see this narrative played out in movies where a brunette is pitched as the smart one and the blonde as the ditzy hot one. Despite this, I'd argue that blondness is still mostly perceived positively. If it wasn't, people wouldn't be bleaching and highlighting their hair so much, and maybe more natural blondes would go brunette. But the blonde psyop is real and deeply rooted. It can be traced back as far as ancient Greece, when Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, was conceived as the first universal blonde, as well as the world's original model of sexual fantasy and power. Sex workers in ancient Greece sought to replicate Aphrodite's blonde hair, applying dye containing saffron to their scalps, oiling their hair, and setting their curls with yellow mud. There's also blonde's connotation of youthfulness. Many blondes have their brightest natural blonde hair in childhood, which typically turns into a blonde or brunette in adulthood. As such, one study found that lighter hair is more generally associated with perceptions of youth, health, and attractiveness than darker hair. And people are fully aware of it. Writer Claudia Rankine shares that many women cite youthfulness as a reason for dyeing their hair blonde, rendering it another attempt to curb visible signs of aging alongside extensive skincare and cosmetic procedures like Botox. She writes, "Not long after I ask another white woman why she bleaches her hair, she explains more explicitly how it returns her to an idea of youthfulness. Was she also blonde as a child? Not really. Hers is a nostalgia for blonde childhood that never existed but was presented again and again in the media as a thing cherished. On all ends of the spectrum, the language used to describe blonde hair is often morally loaded. Rankine even notes this in her book, Just Us, An American Conversation, writing that blonde hair has been associated with everything from prostitution to the paragon of female beauty. All of this considered, why has blondness endured as a modern emblem of chicness? In other words, why does blonde hair still have such a grip on us? And what might it represent to modern women today? Just as a disclaimer, I feel like I always have to give these disclaimers. I don't care if you are blonde and you feel like you dye your hair blonde for other reasons than presented in this video. I'm just speaking on a very general level, and it may or may not apply. So please, if you're blonde, don't be angry with me. If you've been wanting to launch a website, Squarespace is a really accessible, easy to use platform to help you get started. They have pre-made templates and a drag and drop tool called Fluid Engine that allows you to configure your page in the simplest way possible. You can use your website for literally anything from running a virtual storefront to using it as a professional portfolio. Squarespace lets you display projects in customizable galleries and even add password-protected pages if you need to share private work with clients. Plus, they have all the neat business tools you'd want, like powerful built-in analytics so you can track who's visiting your site and more with page views, traffic sources, time on site, most read content, audience geography, etc. Check out squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Mina to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.
Darling blondes do have more fun.
I'm also hoping that this wig doesn't, because it is a wig, sorry to disappoint, doesn't slide back throughout the course of this video because I kind of lazily adhered it to my head. Okay, anyways, we have to go further back in time for a second, to the early days of Hollywood. In the early 1930s, Hollywood helped usher in a new, lavish-looking hue of blonde hair that remains coveted today. Platinum blonde.
Gee, that sounds swell to me.
Jean Harlow was the first platinum blonde movie star. Unlike the more yellow or honey-toned tints of natural or classically dyed blonde hair, Harlow's hair had a cool silver hue to it, almost white or bright gray in appearance. She first captivated audiences with her hair in Hell's Angels, her breakout role, which was produced and directed by aviation tycoon Howard Hughes in 1930. Who says you can't do it all? Hughes actually helped coin the platinum blonde moniker when he persuaded director Frank Capra to change the name of Harlow's 1931 film from Gallagher to Platinum Blonde. However, Harlow's biographer Eve Golden sets the record straight, writing that Harlow wasn't actually the first ever platinum blonde on screen. She claims that Harlow was actually inspired by the many bright blonde extras who stood out in the background of scenes. The high visibility of these extras influenced Harlow to bring bright blonde to the foreground of films. When I say high visibility, yes, there are also technical benefits to being blonde on screen. Lighting techniques developed in favor of blonde hair, such as the introduction of backlighting, which involves placing a primary light source behind a subject on screen, separating them from the background to create depth, as well as a halo effect around the figure. The visibility also helped uphold the construction of a movie star's image, allowing her to stand out in a crowd of non-famous people. As such, Professor Pam Cook writes that the performance of blondness became an integral part of the image of stars and celebrities. Also, just as a reminder, this was like the early 20th century, so this was before like home dyeing. Processes were really abundant, so there were way less blondes walking around than there are today. If you were a blonde movie star, you really stood out. Other actresses of the time emulated Harlow's platinum blonde, including Joan Crawford, Mae West, Bette Davis, and Greta Garbo. And there were women off screen who also followed suit, with beauty parlors reporting an overwhelming demand to turn hair platinum. On the Platinum Blonde Rage, a 1931 edition of Screen Book magazine reads, "If one would be properly dazzling and seductive, now one must have platinum hair, thanks to Jean, who started this rage. The near blondes are lucky, for with the assistance of a few acids, that desired silvery sheen can be obtained." But what was it about platinum blonde hair specifically that spurred this pandemonium? For one, platinum connotes preciousness and exclusivity. For Bright Lights Film Journal, Heather Addison writes that platinum is one of the Earth's rarest and most valuable metals, thus emphasizing that Harlow possessed a one-of-a-kind beauty that was influential and difficult to emulate. Platinum also signified modernity and the innovation of the machine age. Magazines often used technical, industrial-sounding language to describe Harlow's hair. For instance, a 1930 edition of Hollywood Filmograph reads, "Uprose the platinum-haired sensation of screenland. In the spotlight, her gorgeous loveliness shone like a new comet flashing suddenly athwart the blue flame of heaven." Addison further argues that associating a platinum blonde with modernity suggested that whiteness wasn't just an element of nostalgia for the past, but a crucial ingredient of a dynamic and forward-looking future. This association reified whiteness as a key aspect of a dynamic modern world, reassuring Western audiences of the endurance of white hegemony during a time when increased immigration struck fears among white people all over the country. Platinum blonde hair also retained an exclusive status because the color and moniker made it seem expensive. And not only does platinum blonde hair look expensive, it is expensive. And Platinum Girl Golden writes that Harlow's initial dye process, including the follow-up shampoo and set, cost between $7.50 and $50, depending on the beauty shop. Weekly touch-ups added another $10. For context, $10 in 1931 is about $218 in today's money, meaning that Harlow's initial platinum treatment could have cost over $1,000. While many sought to imitate Harlow's hair, the high cost and lavish appearance of platinum blonde served to gatekeep it from the masses. Nowadays, platinum blonde is like the edgier shade of blonde hair, I'd say. It's high fashion, it's punk, it's obviously artificial, but back then the press tried to perpetuate the myth that Harlow's hair color was natural. Harlow herself even told several newspapers that her hair was not dyed, but that she rather used a bluing solution to create its glossy whiteness. In November 1931, an article in Photoplay magazine titled, "Don't Go Platinum Yet, Read Before You Die," dramatically warned readers to not attempt to transition to platinum hair if they didn't have the natural propensity for it, aka if they weren't white. The article read, "Beauty specialists warn women that only those gifted with Harlow's natural light coloring, transparent skin, and white teeth should consider it."
Blonde hair, blonde teeth, blonde life.
Heather Addison emphasizes how conceiving blondness as an exclusive quality served to prevent non-white women from posturing as white, writing, "Readers were continually warned of the dangers of pursuing extreme blondness, hinting that there was an undercurrent of fear at the prospect of large numbers of American females being able to pass as white, or even ultra-white." Following Harlow's reign in the 1930s, blondes continued to be preferentially cast through the end of World War II and onwards. Many Hollywood films used blondness on screen to represent white superiority and American pride pretty deliberately, as in the films The Blonde Captive, Trader Horn, Blonde Venus, and King Kong. In the 1943 war film, So Proudly We Hail, blondness functioned as a form of patriotism and as a means to double down on anti-Japanese sentiment on the heels of Pearl Harbor. In the film, blonde actress Veronica Lake lures in a group of Japanese soldiers before throwing a grenade and exploding them all. A literal blonde bombshell. Lake's role in So Proudly We Hail also represents the femme fatale, an on-screen female archetype that proliferated during the heyday of film noir in the 1940s. Throughout the 20th century, countless other male-conceived archetypes of on-screen women were invented, many of which closely relied on associations with blondness. I mean, just the fact that blonde is stated in so many film titles goes to show the hair color's influential place in cinema. In On Blondes, Joanna Pitman writes that the dumb blonde archetype was popularized by Marilyn Monroe and Jane Mansfield in the 1950s in films like How to Marry a Millionaire, The 7-Year Itch, and Promises, Promises. This type of character was written in response to the growing anxiety men had about women's burgeoning independence in the post-war period. Pitman writes, "They banished all those sensibly shod career women role models from wartime movies, strong, self-confident women who rolled up their sleeves and did without makeup and got things done. In their place, they put Monroe." Alfred Hitchcock was a director known for casting blondes, or Hitchcock blondes as they came to be known, including Grace Kelly, Kim Novak, and Tippi Hedren. To Hitchcock, the sexual allure of blondes made them the perfect embodiment of suspense in his films, mystery personified. He once said, Suspense is like a woman. The more left to the imagination, the more excitement. The perfect woman of mystery is one who is blonde, subtle, and Nordic. Feels gross. I'm not gonna lie. Pitman argues that even the girl next door archetypes, represented by the likes of Sandra Dee and Doris Day, were also invented by male executives, desperate to appeal to teenage girls and win them over from the onslaught of television in the 1960s. Pitman sums up the varied representations and reactions to blondness on screen well, writing, "So the blonde, whether buxom, coolly elegant, or bland, was still the dominant female type in Hollywood and as such covered the aspirational ground for much of America." Advertisers capitalized on the success of blondes on screen, eager to sell young women an attainable version of their favorite starlet's blonde beauty. In 1956, the hair care brand Clairol introduced its breakthrough product, Miss Clairol, the first single step-at-home hair dye product, allowing women to dye their hair quickly and easily in just one step. The Miss Clairol marketing images sought to portray blondes as respectable, depicting middle-class women reading books or accompanying their children. Much of the ad copy surrounding Miss Clairol emphasized its discreetness, indicating that people wouldn't be able to tell if your hair was dyed or not. Does she or doesn't she? Was one of the product's most prominent slogans. Speaking of slogans, copywriter Charlee Reiff is widely credited for crafting the brand image surrounding Miss Clairol. Unlike many beauty campaigns that leaned into high glamour images of posh made-up women, Reiff insisted that the models for Miss Clairol be more girl next door. Shirtwaist types instead of glamour gowns, as she put it. She also turned the phrase, "Is it true blondes have more fun?" into a slogan which Allure dubs one of the most famous lines in advertising history. "If I've only one life, let me live it as a blonde." Before the Miss Clairol campaign, only 7% of American women colored their hair. By the end of Reiff's time on the Clairol account, the number rose to over 40%. The success of the Miss Clairol campaign speaks to how important hair, and more specifically hair color, is to one's identity creation. The hair theory trend on TikTok similarly posits that the way you present your hair can change how you're perceived and how you perceive yourself. On the surface, this feels a bit obvious, right? Like, obviously, our appearance communicates something about us to the world. For example, when I had no eyebrows, the common impression was, "Oh, you work in fashion," or "You're crazy and you look weird." There's a really fine line between high fashion and high judgment is what I'll say. Some would say they're the same thing. However, this hair theory becomes more interesting when you bring in the sociocultural implications of blondness into frame. Take Marilyn Monroe, for instance. According to Pitman, director Billy Wilder says that Monroe was entirely aware that blondness was at the core of her public appeal, which in part made her a bit cagey about sharing the screen with other blondes. He shared that in Some Like It Hot, another blonde actress was supposed to be in the fictional band that Monroe's character plays in. And Monroe told him, "No other blonde. I'm the only blonde." In Let's Make Love, Monroe allegedly complained to the director about another actress having blonde streaks in her hair. She refused to report to set until the actress's hair color was changed or was dismissed entirely. The feeling that blondness was central to Monroe's identity as a star likely fueled her scarcity mentality, along with the justified fear of studios replacing her with younger blonde actresses, as they're known to do. Rumors even say that Monroe was the blonde replacement for Betty Grable. Hollywood helped codify the implications of being blonde for celebrity women and non-famous women alike. And brands like Clairol helped conceive hair color as an identity facet that everyday women could toggle, changing the way they see themselves in the world and how the world sees them. In other words, blondness and the social benefits attached to being blonde were now accessible to non-movie star women. And yet, blondness did not come without a cost. And it still doesn't today. The high cost of going blonde is paid in 3 hefty ways: money, time spent in the salon chair, and structural integrity of the hair itself. First things first, money. As it was in Jean Harlow's day, dyeing and maintaining platinum hair is still an extremely expensive endeavor. Megan Flynn told Pop Sugar that her total cost to go platinum over 3 years is $8,674. Annually, this breaks down to $2,400 spent on highlights, $2,975 spent on root touch-ups every 6 weeks, and $108 on at-home products. Many women likely justify the high price of going blonde with the social and identity-forming benefits they receive as a result of it. Like other beauty and appearance-oriented expenditures, It must feel like a small price to pay to feel more like yourself and accepted by those around you. Another woman, a Texas blonde named Brittany, reports spending $3,385 a year on her color and cut to maintain her honey platinum shade. She's been dyeing her hair for 15 years, since 6th grade, sharing that she absolutely thinks there's added pressure to be blonde in Texas in particular. She told Refinery 29, "Brunettes feel like a minority here. What comes to mind when you think Dallas Cowboy cheerleader? Blonde." We also have the image of Jessica Simpson and her Daisy Dukes and big blonde hair to try to live up to, so that's a lot of pressure. In addition to money, blondness strains women of their time. In a guide to going blonde in Grazia magazine, stylist Zuleika Acosta advised blondes to, quote, be sure that their schedule allows for frequent visits to the salon, describing platinum blonde hair in particular as high maintenance. Yes, if you want to professionally maintain your blonde hair, you'd have to go to the salon as often as every 4 to 6 weeks. Each appointment usually involves many hours sitting in foils and under the dryer hood, waiting for the next phase in the process.
It's a full-time job, and it's extremely time-consuming, and it's not as easy as it may appear to some people.
Blondness is thus most attainable for those who have the means to afford it, as well as the flexibility to schedule and attend routine sessions at the salon. This makes maintaining blondness a challenge for working women, especially those who aren't self-employed and or mothers who don't have other nannies. Of course, you can DIY at home, but results will vary depending on your personal skill level, and even then, it's still going to take hours.
It just keeps falling out.
The final cost of going blonde is the hair itself. Despite what Jean Harlow told the press, her hair color wasn't achieved through a bluing solution. It was actually achieved through hydrogen peroxide and ammonia, which stripped her hair strands. Since Harlow already had naturally light hair, this only took 1 or 2 processes, whereas a brunette would have required several hours of repeated bleaching. Next, a platinum rinse was applied, which dried the hair out tremendously, leaving it brittle and difficult to manage. After years of this process, Harlow's hair was reduced to bristles, having broken off in clumps. Towards the end of her career, she wore wigs and switched back to her natural honey-colored hair. The first time her real hair color was on screen was for the film Wife vs. Secretary in 1936. Harlow told the press, "For the first time in my life, I lost that conspicuous feeling. I felt more real than I'd ever felt." While bleaching processes have greatly improved since the 1930s, going blonde is still strenuous on your hair and scalp. Going platinum in particular involves removing all pigment from the hair, transitioning to its latest possible stage, which is called level 10 in the hair industry. This can take multiple sessions of bleach depending on the color you're starting with. Bleaching can cause the hair's key proteins called keratins to break, leading to brittleness and a lack of structural integrity. This can make hair permanently drier, thicker, and rougher, and even lead to hair loss. For the Zoe Report, Laura Leginis Kaupke wrote about playing with fire when seeking out a near impossible platinum look. Her stylist, Lizzie Lee, lifted her color little by little over 9 months, attaining a bright blonde that still wasn't bright enough for Kaupke. She visited another colorist a few weeks later and underwent a double process appointment that achieved that coveted icy dramatic look. But a week or so later, her hair hit a breaking point, quite literally, in which nearly half of it split off within only a couple of inches of her scalp. I had a phase in college when I would dye my hair different colors, including bright yellow, like not blonde, literally yellow. And I went to the salon to achieve this because yellow is such a light color for me that I didn't trust DIYing it. Except the day that I went, my hairstylist was for some reason the only person working in the salon. And bless him, this wasn't really his fault. He was juggling like 4 clients at the same time. But he didn't pay enough attention to my hair during the bleaching step. And parts of it ended up burning off so that I was left with a number of 2-inch strands just like sticking out of my head. Thankfully, most of my hair kept length, so it wasn't like too noticeable. But I remember being horrified. And then of course doing that thing that women do where we pretend that everything's fine and we're so happy with how we almost ended up looking like Cynthia from Rugrats, and here's my $200.
Blondie, do you guys like it?
Wowzers.
You might remember that Kim Kardashian debuted a platinum blonde look in 2017 that was so icy, it almost looked gray. Hairstylist Chris Appleton was the brains behind Kim's platinum blonde. For Vogue, he shared that Kim's first bleaching took a whopping 17 hours. Kim's platinum hair barely lasted a year. You know, even with all the resources and money in the world, there's just no quickening the process of going blonde or making it any less strenuous on your hair itself.
I'm dyeing my hair blonde and it's gonna take forever.
Wait, have you ever heard of this thing called a wig?
But from the outside, there's really no way of knowing that. I honestly didn't know that so many blondes were actually brunettes, and it totally blew my mind open when I realized how many of y'all are just sitting in salon chairs for like multiple days of a year. In December 2017, Kim got #real about how demanding the blonde had become, tweeting, "Spent the last few weeks bleaching my roots. We do it in stages so it doesn't break off. OMG, 13 hours and still going. The blonde is very high maintenance. Love you, Chris Appleton, but getting over this." Given the demands of maintaining blonde hair, I find it fascinating that Carolyn Bessette Kennedy's hair, let's not forget about her, and her style in general are often lauded for being effortless. According to celebrity stylist Carrie Hill, in the early 90s, Bessette's hair was much higher contrast, darker underneath with bold, warm highlights layered over the surface. The look wasn't meant to seem lived in, but have visible highlights, including what are known as money pieces or bright strands in the front, serving to frame the face. In photos from this period, she almost appears brunette. However, as Bessette stepped further into the spotlight, dating JFK Jr., her hair became much blonder and brighter. Bessette's colorist, Brad Johns, told Vogue that they worked hard to get the color right, highlighting the hair in chunks to create what would become a signature buttery blonde look. Sarah Pigeon, a natural brunette, spent 20 hours in the salon chair for her first blonde session in preparation to play Bessette on Love Story. Carrie Hill, who led the transformation, used a technique she calls foiled cashmere, in which she weaves delicate, controlled sections of hair into the foils, almost thread-like, to build soft contrast without harsh lines. Since the premiere of Love Story, countless style guides have provided tips for achieving Bessette's buttery blonde. Rush magazine advises women to ask their colorist for a root-shadowed blonde that allows for natural depth of the base, with hand-painted highlights woven subtly through the mid-length and ends. They then follow up this tip with the assurance that the best Bessette blondes are low maintenance yet high impact. There seems to be a lot of paradoxes at play in describing Bessette's hair. It's somehow effortless and low maintenance, but in reality, expensive and requires many hours to get right. This sort of effortless facade was bolstered by the rest of Carolyn's look, of course, which seemed to be quite easygoing. She never wore statement jewelry or luxury brand logos, and she rarely wore her hair in complicated updos or tight curls. This perhaps made her appear more pedestrian than, say, her mother-in-law, Jackie Kennedy, who rarely attended events without pearls, silk gloves, and a perfectly coiffed hairdo. Also, because CBK was maintaining that blonde, there's hardly any photos of her with her roots showing, giving the impression that she was just born this way. CBK's style is compelling because we can't see the brushstrokes so easily. She appears to have rolled out of bed looking perfect. It therefore makes perfect sense that this effortless beauty would appeal to millennial and Gen Z women today, who are drawn to beauty and style trends that appear easy and natural on the surface, specifically clean girl beauty. Women find themselves in a common double bind when it comes to beauty. They're expected to alter their appearances to align with societally enforced beauty standards, but not alter themselves so much that they appear to be misrepresenting their true selves. Researchers found that a person's physical appearance shapes assumptions about their internal characteristics. For instance, wearing a lot of heavy makeup or getting a lot of filler can evoke a negative moral appraisal. People perceive you as vain or self-absorbed. However, not altering one's appearance enough can elicit disgust or accusations of laziness. A common experience for a woman is that if we show up to work without any makeup at all, people are like, "You look tired." Thus, women must walk a fine line, making it look like they put forth just the right amount of effort to appear beautiful. An ASU study published similar findings, but what I found interesting about this study was that the researchers also found that women who were of average attractiveness, who looked okay and used high effort beauty work, were judged more negatively than women who were already attractive and used the same high effort beauty work. In other words, natural beauty is considered morally superior to manufactured beauty. These findings feel connected to the long-held belief that beauty work is used to trick people, specifically men. St. Augustine and St. Ambrose of late antiquity considered cosmetic adornment to be means of deception and an affront to God's creation. Alexandra Zhurnova argues that this is linked to the fear that women could have power over men with their beauty, a theory that shows up again throughout history, from the myth of sirens luring sailors to their death to the modern "take her swimming on the first date" elegy. This association between high-effort beauty work and immoral behavior may be part of what's inspired the current clean girl trend. The clean girl is conceived as natural and effortless, usually wearing a no makeup look, slicked back hair, and neutral tone clothes, as well as naturally glowy skin. Violet Nguyen writes that the clean girl aesthetic suggests a life free from stress and exhaustion. The clean girl strikes a perfect balance between high and low beauty effort, putting in enough effort to avoid appearing lazy, but not having excessive visible adornment, which would imply vanity and neediness and undermine her intelligence. Nguyen connects the clean girl aesthetic to the popular conception of a 1950s housewife who was expected to be perfectly composed and beautiful while making her domestic work invisible. Similarly, the orderliness and simplicity of a clean girl makes her an idealized picture of American femininity, quiet and easy. Her beauty is simply the result of her healthy lifestyle. The natural blonde carries a similar reverence as the clean girl. According to writer Tressie McMillan Cottom, given the racialized social benefits that come with being blonde, many are reluctant to claim that it's something that they sought out through a dye job. The impression they want to give is their blondness is simply the result of winning the genetic lottery. She writes, "That is the thing about status. We all want it, but should we acquire it? We don't want it to mean anything. We don't want to feel bad about having status."
I mean, these are natural, but...
All beauty, including maintaining blonde hair and appearing as a clean girl, takes some kind of effort. The only thing that has changed with trends across time and space is how well the work itself is concealed. Related to the clean girl is the high maintenance to be low maintenance mantra. The phrase asserts that professional treatments like waxing, eyebrow threading, mani-pedis, and more will save you time and energy in the long run. Even on a surface level, this phrase doesn't really make sense though, given that all those treatments require time and money spent, making them inherently high maintenance. All the same, these trends definitely feel tied to how Carolyn Bissette's style was perceived then and now. Like the clean girl, 90s media described Bissette's style as innate and no fuss. In Love Story, there's even a scene where Bissette is asked about a chic outfit she's wearing at the Calvin Klein office, and she casually says she just threw it on that morning. While I do think CBK has good style, her appeal is heightened by the fact that she's tall, skinny, and blonde. Physical characteristics that are associated with classic Western beauty and the archetype that the fashion industry literally designs clothes for. Obviously, clothes are going to look good on her. But she's not just revered for her style, she's revered for what her physical beauty represents in the American public eye. An effortless, almost accidental beauty, which is perceived as moral and acceptable. Many outlets that describe Bissette's style even focus on her physical self instead of her clothes. One article opens with Bissette being described as 6 feet tall and a perfect size 6 before getting into the details of her clothes. Nothing about Bissette's beauty or blondness is an accident. You can especially see her curatorial eye by tracing the way her style changed after marrying JFK Jr. Following her wedding, Glynis McNichol writes that Bissette's necklines became more conservative and her hair was more often slicked back. She also became much blonder, perhaps as a way to appear more favorably to the American public. As I'm saying this, I don't want to make it seem that CBK was inauthentic or purposely trying to elevate herself above the common woman. In reality, I never met her, so I can't make any kind of character judgment. She could be perfectly nice. She could be a bully. I don't know. But what I do know is that she essentially married into the American royal family. And so I'm sure that whether or not it was her desire to, she was pressured into appearing a certain way by the people around her. I also don't want to imply that she's only likable for her looks, but I feel like the mainstream narrative heavily focuses on that aspect of her, which is why I crafted this video to comment on her style and not her personality or her career as a publicist. I'm not saying that she should only be known for being blonde, okay? I'm just saying that she is known for being blonde currently, and I want to know why that is. In conclusion, changing one's appearance is a powerful means of identity creation, with hair being an especially mighty tool in one's arsenal. Due to its racial associations, Claudia Rankine suggests that going blonde might be one way to more easily access whiteness, though she also wonders if it's a means of attaining the unattainable more broadly. She writes, "Normal people, not in the wealthiest 1%, bleach their hair blonde as well. Normal people. It's a conscious or unconscious complicity with the idea that white life is a standard for normal life. Does this make the reach for blondness a reach for normality while still wishing for the extraordinary fun, extraordinary beauty, extraordinary attractiveness? Princess Diana, James Dean, Beyonce are all symbols of that extraordinary. Everything." Rankine goes on to wonder whether too many women are putting stock in hair color, changing their life for the better, though. Blondness alone can't change your social status overnight, nor can it guarantee you the self-confidence that the dye box falsely promises. In a similar sense, the appeal of Carolyn Bissette's style seems to be its accessibility, or perceived accessibility. Many style guides attempt to give readers tips on how to get her look. But many critics are pushing back on this, suggesting that developing a sense of personal style isn't as simple as copying and pasting. Matteo Azzolini writes that the uncomfortable truth is that CBK's aesthetic, whatever its origins, isn't replicable. You can't buy the restraint if that's what it is. You can't buy the context, the background, the particular kind of upper class ease that makes almost nothing look like everything, and you certainly can't buy it on Shein. That kind of taste is slow, it's uncomfortable, and it runs completely counter to how we consume identity right now. I think the personal style conversation can be so pretentious and repetitive, but the bottom line, like the development of personal style has almost always come down to time and financial expenditure, even among those who claim to have woken up like that. Okay, this is the end of the video, guys. Thank you so much for staying tuned, listening, watching, whatever it is, engaging. And I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. I'll see you next time. I feel like my circulation is just like cutting off, so I'm getting a little lightheaded. We're gonna take this baby off expeditiously and go back to being a wonderful brunette. Bye.